We're back to the Coach's Corner, sponsored by Premier Lending here on the Homes Begin Here Network. And I'm your host, Devin and Rick.
And I'm Coach Rick Koenig.
Hey, and we're here as always to bring you all kinds of tips and insight on how to have great success in today's mortgage market. So, Coach, I know we've been doing a series on how to get out there and connect with top-tier agents, but I think we were going to maybe hit the brakes on that this week and talk about a more pressing topic. What do we got this week, Coach?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's actually for the real estate agents if you do and execute the plan right. What we're seeing right now out in the marketplace and have for almost the last 2.5 years is a lot of your producers, whether they're high producers or low producers, if they're following up with their past closed loan database, their circle of influence, we are finding out that as much as 60 to 70% of these top people's referrals are coming from their database and circle of influence. And if you think about that, who's the first person you're going to take one of those leads back to if they're looking to buy or sell? Well, you're going to take it back to the agent that originally sent it to you. But what if that agent's no longer producing or not around, or they refer you a family friend or something and it wasn't just for them? You can use this as an opportunity to take that deal to a new real estate agent that you're either have established a relationship with and you want to make it stronger, or to try to get in the door with somebody.
Well, hold on a second, Coach. You said follow up with my past customer database. I haven't been following up with my past customer database. Like, how do I even, what does that look like? Like, where do I start?
Just get your list out. Now, one of the things we talked about in another meeting today was there's an app that you can download on your phone called Covey Export. It's Covve. And there are a couple of things named Covey. So when you go to look for it, it's like a blue box with kind of an arrow that points to the box. And with Covey, you're able to just download it onto your phone or, load it up as an app. It does cost $4.99 now. It's a one-time fee. It used to be free, but we had so many of our coaching clients utilizing the tool. I think somebody went, "Hey, this thing's getting used like crazy. We're missing out on making money.
We're missing the buck."
Yeah, they started charging for it.
Yeah.
And so it's still a great tool. Literally within about 10 seconds after you download it, you hit the button, it'll give you every contact in your phone, and it'll ask you where you want it emailed to. And you can email yourself a CRV or an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can go through it and you can separate family, friends, past coworkers, past clients, real estate agents. You can develop it, and then you can import it into your CRM that you're using. Of course, over here at Premier Lending, we're using Bonzo right now, and you can set that thing up to import everybody in.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you just got to start somewhere. And I think a lot of folks get, kind of uncomfortable with the fact that they haven't been following up. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to say? And let's talk about that. There's two things, right? Number one, your customers don't necessarily know you're supposed to follow up. They don't know, right? They don't know that your job is to follow up at least once a quarter. So it's okay, even if it's been 2-3 years since you've talked to them, because at the end of the day, they're just going to be happy to hear your voice again, right? You help them with an experience on, one of the biggest, things that they're going to purchase in their life, right? Which is their home. And you were the beginning of all those memories that came over the last 3 years, right? The Christmases and the Thanksgivings and the holidays. And if you did it right, or even if you did it wrong, you were tied to that, right? You're tied to that experience. So it's never too late to pick up the phone and reach out to those customers. And, Coach, what do I say, right? What do I say to somebody I haven't talked to in 3 years?
So easy. You just, when they answer the phone, you go, in my case, "Hey, it's Coach Rick. How you doing, Devin?" And they turn right on. Rick,
oh man,
what are you
Coach.
up to? Yeah. Hey, I'm just checking in. I started calling my old database of clients just to see how you were doing and make sure you guys are in a good position. And, quite frankly, just to say thanks for your past business. So what's going on with you guys?
Wait, you want to tell me thank you? You jerk. You just called to tell me thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we heard today in a coaching session about somebody who hadn't called somebody in his database for 10 years and got at least one referral. I can't remember if it was two or not,
Yeah.
but this individual tries to call 25 people a week, and that's not necessarily, 1/12 of his database. If you think about it, a quarter is 13 weeks. If you try to call your database once a quarter and you divide it up by 12 weeks, you could end up, if you've got hundreds and hundreds, you could end up, needing to call quite a few people every week.
Yeah.
And but just like this guy started with, he started with 25 because he knows he can get that done. This week alone, from his database, two referrals, one purchase, and one refinance, and then he got one lead from an agent this week. So 66% of his stuff came from his referral database today by making 25 calls a week.
That's it, and that's just 25 calls, and that's just warming the database up, right? What we know, Coach, is as you start to warm that database up, and they know that you're going to be reaching out to them once a quarter. Once a quarter, by the way, guys. Like if you're thinking about how often do I follow up with the database, once a quarter. There's been studies on this, and if it's once a month, it pulls the same amount of referrals as once a quarter, and once a month may actually turn some people off, right? You're calling a little too often, right? But once a quarter, it activates the database. It lets you know that you're thinking about them. And then if you've got a CRM, put notes in there, right? Remind yourself about what you talked about last time. If, little Timmy is, having a tooth pulled, hey, how'd that work out, right? You're actually going to make them think about 3 months ago. Yeah, I know, Coach, I'm thinking about you.
Done that this week.
They're going to think about that like Coach just did. Like, oh, man, yeah, man, I forgot all about that. Yeah, we did talk about that. But the fact that you didn't forget, that's important to them. And then, how do you activate them? Well, first off, it's just, hey, as always, I like to call and say thank you. I appreciate you having you in my network. It was a great experience helping you guys with your home purchase. And, I also would love to ask, a favor. Hey, if you're out there in the industry, I loved working with you. If you know any other cool people, anybody as cool as Coach Rick, right? That might be in the market, I would love to help your friends and family. That'd be really great. And hey, by the way, if you could do this, Coach, if you can save me in your phone as Devin, your mortgage guy, right? I know, because, sometimes you'll forget my last name. It's Dubuque. It's boring, but you always remember mortgage guy or mortgage gal, right? At the end of the day, you'll always know, who to think about when you're thinking mortgage. And more importantly, if you do find somebody, instead of just giving my number, hey, do me a favor and shoot a 3-way text. What I've found is sometimes when you give them my number, they won't always call. And when you do the 3-way text, I'll always call them because I love working with you. I'm going to make sure you look good. I'm going to take really good care of your people for you,
When I love the word that you use, activation, because you and I both know that one of the things by asking them, hey, do you have any family or friends, people as cool as you, anybody that you work with, your own kids, your kids are old enough to be buying houses now. You activate what's called the reticular activator, and I actually have kind of what I call the reticular activator ask, and it involves using a little bit of a story to explain to them sometimes what a reticular activator is. So the first time you talk to him, you can say, hey, I know this might sound really funny, but if you do have any family or friends, people that are looking need some help on purchasing a house, I'd love to be able to help you out. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm asking you is, by asking you, you're going to start thinking about it, because I'm going to activate that reticular activator in your head. And they'll go, what? And you'll go, yeah, have you ever heard of reticular activator? And they'll always say, some of them
sounds
say,
dirty.
I've heard of it. Yeah. Well, here's how it works. Devin, what's the last car you bought? And you ask them, what's the last car you bought? And you make them give you an answer, so you bought a Bronco. And on the way home, although I know yours has big tires and all kinds of other stuff, how many Broncos did you see and have you seen since you bought yours, including ones with big tires?
Every day. And Jeeps, because they're kind of in the same category. So you think about both when you see them, right?
Now you put that into their head.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about family or friends or somebody looking to buy or refinance. And then every time you call once a quarter, you can throw something new at them. Hey, there's a lot of people out there that accumulated a lot of debt since COVID, and yet they've got great interest rate on their house and they've got incredible equity. Do you know anybody out there that might need to get some cash out of their house to reduce their monthly payments and maybe pay off student loans or pay for a wedding or anything? And all of a sudden they're talking to a friend, it's talking about a wedding,
Yep.
and they say, yeah, I just don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Hey, my mortgage guy was talking to me about this the other day.
Well, let's take that a little
So
deeper too, Coach. Because again, what you're talking about there is, planting a seed about, effectively when you run into somebody, hey, have you thought about these things? Have you thought about, paying off debt, using some of the equity from the transaction? But another pro tip here is to turn that into a story. And, we all have stories that we could use. And if they're not our stories, we're hearing people because we're in the industry talking about other people that they helped. So the story can be their story too, as long as you don't say it's yours, right? Hey, we just helped another family doing this, right? And there's another way you can do that, right? So you're on the call with the customer and say, hey, look, I know you guys got in at a killer rate. You guys are at 3.25. I know it probably doesn't make any sense to do anything with that, and that's why I'd love to help friends and family. But, did you know, Coach, I got to tell you the story, man. I ran into this customer the other day, and I didn't think that this was going to make sense for them because they had a 2.99 rate on their mortgage. And, they were looking to get cash. They didn't want to touch the mortgage because they had such a great rate on the mortgage. But they had a lot of credit card debt. In fact, they had about $50,000 in credit card debt, and they also needed another $25,000 to help put their kid through school for the first semester. We know school is expensive, right?
yeah.
And we took a look at it. We're like, well, what if, right? Well, did you know that the credit card was average on their credit card rate was 25%? And, I looked that up, found out that is the average. In fact, some people have as high as 29, 30%. I mean, the mafia is running our credit companies these days, right? And that's compound interest daily, right? So, F you pay me, right? But at the end of the day, what we found, because their credit card rates were so high, even by taking the mortgage and putting them into a new fixed loan at a higher interest rate, we saved them so much money. They were saving $800 a month. They got the additional $25 to pay for that semester of college, but they also had another $25,000 that they were able to set aside in the bank, and they're still saving money. And then if they apply that difference back to the mortgage, it's crazy. They were going to pay off the home and all the debt, like 22 years. They had 25 years less when we started. So it's just crazy how that works when you really start to think about repurposing the equity in the house. And what we found also, Coach, was that a lot of people, the average in the industry today is about $300,000 in equity of their home. But most people have about $104,000 in. Hey, let me ask you a question, Coach. If you were going to pay anything off right now, what would you pay off?
Oh, cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're debt free, so this is a tough one for you, right? But most customers literally will go right into it. I'd actually, I pay off this and this, but I don't really want. Hey, I get it, but let me ask you a question. If we looked at doing that and, it was going to save you some money, why don't we do this? Why don't we just look at it? Let's just look at it and see if we could save you some money. And let me tell you this, Coach, if it doesn't make sense for you to do it, I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you. Now, if they say, no, I don't really have anything I want to pay off, abort mission, right? Hey, but if you run into a friend or family member that, that is in that scenario, and wants to tap into that equity to help free up some cash, because there's a lot of people in trouble right there now out there. There's people out there that don't have capital and they're looking for answers, and if you could be that solution, or if I can be that solution for them, I'd love to. But remember, when you end that call, whether they give you a referral or don't give you a referral, always make sure to ask them, hey, I appreciate you helping me. Hey, is there anything I can do to help you? And don't make it about mortgage. Just, is there anything I can do to help you? Because they're going to remember that. Right.
Well, and a lot of times they don't want to tell you right there on the spot. They might ask a question for a friend, and the friend ends up being them. And what I've even seen is when you add up all their monthly payments, what they're paying in interest rates on cars and credit cards and personal loans and stuff like that, that not only can you can pick a number, say, hey, look, you're paying out this much money right now. We could reduce that down to this if you just refinance and pull the cash out. But what if, are you comfortable with, $300, $400, $500 higher, and we take it from a 30, which you have 27 years left on, and we took it down to a 20-year?
Yeah.
What if we cut 7 years off along with you? We can end up saving this much money, and you have to be quick and use your calculator and say, I can save you this much money, take 7 years off your loan, and as long as you don't go back out there and charge those credit cards or get silly, your life is going to be changed.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest thing about what we do, is when we change lives for the better.
That's it. So, if you're looking for things to talk about with your database, it's simple, right? You just pick up the phone and start dialing. It doesn't matter how long that it's been. They don't know that you're supposed to call them, right? And at the end of the day, just be thankful. Hey, I just want to tell you, I just truly appreciate you. I remember working with you as a customer, and, I wanted to reach back out and tell you how much I appreciated you. And I had to check in, right? How have you guys been? How's the family? What's going on with everything?
And to turn it back to the realtors real quick,
Yeah.
if you don't have a big database, you haven't been in the business a long time, or you're a rookie, go ahead and call some of these realtors and suggest to them, hey, is anybody calling your database to help generate leads for you? Hey, I do an annual mortgage review. I'm willing to give your people a call, talk to them about how their mortgage is. I don't tell them that I did their mortgage or I didn't do their mortgage, but I'm going to let them know that I'm calling on your behalf. And I'm going to ask them, do they know anybody that's looking to buy or sell a home? I also ask them about refinances too, but I don't always mention that to the realtors because they get a little stuffy. Well, refinance doesn't help me. Well, yeah, it does. Based on our model, we stay in contact with those people weekly throughout the process, and we ask them for referrals. And guess what they give us sometimes? Purchase referrals. So those referrals
I think it's bigger
will come
than
back
that.
to you.
I think it's bigger than that. It's not just about the fact that we're going to get the referral back to them. If you, the agent, are the one that's suggesting how they can put themselves in a better financial position, you become their trusted advisor. And guess what? When they've got a trusted advisor, they're going to come back to you again and again and again and again. And I've heard agents talk about this. In fact, I've had some agents that done some really big production that just talked about doing some of the leasing stuff. And they're like, oh, most of the agents in my industry won't mess with them. But they use that as a bridge to get to the long-term finance. And now these same agents that started off, doing the leasing agreements that a lot of people frown upon are now doing massive production on a higher level because those people that leased from a year ago are now moving into properties, and guess who they're turning to? The agent that helped them, right? So, to go back to the past customer database before we wrap up today, Coach, guys, this is a great time to make sure, if you haven't been doing it, to get started, because we know, we're hearing, and by the way, today is Thursday, the 6th of March, 2025. So if you're listening to this, we're hearing great news about, the rates potentially going to see 3 cuts in 2025. Spring season is going to look really good. And that's going to bring a lot of opportunity for people that are buying. So it's going to bring a lot of opportunity for people that need to refinance and get out of those high interest rates. So this is a time to activate the database. You've got to make sure that you're getting out there and making those connections, because right now we're farming for the big harvest. And the big harvest is coming. It's coming very, very soon. So those of you who have been waiting, and working so hard to keep this business moving forward in 2023 and 2024, this is your opportunity to really get yourself set up to be able to reap the benefits of all the hard work that you've put forward. Get the fruits of those labor going, right?
And one last thing, always, if you're talking to people about a possible refinance and they're talking about rates, suggest a target rate or ask them what a target rate would be, and ask for their permission that, hey, if it gets there and this is what your monthly payment would be, are you comfortable pulling the trigger? Because the last 2 times it hit this number, it jumped back up within 24 to 48 hours. And I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to call everybody. But if you say, hey, Rick, we get to this rate, pull the trigger, I can do that trigger for you.
I'm going to take that a step further. Get the target payment. You figure out what the rate is, right? And at the end of the day, hey, if we can get to that target payment, right? Is that something that's interesting to you? And then that way you're not tying it to an interest rate. You're tying it to a payment, which is really what they care about, right? At the end of the day, hey, if we get your payments lowered to this point, right? Which means that obviously the interest rate's improved. Is this something you'd be interested in? Hey, I'm going to put you in my system and figure out what that rate would be to get them there. And then you know what the rate is. That way you're not selling rate. I don't like selling rate. I like to sell benefit and payment, what we're going to do for you long term. So just make sure you're thinking about the right things. But hey, if you're out there, listening to the Coach's Corner and, you want more insight, more information, you want to meet with me or Coach Rick, if you want to learn how Coach Rick is debt free, I'd love to learn that one too someday. Click the link below and, we're going to have resources to be able to jump right onto our calendar. We'd love for you to like, comment, and subscribe. We want to keep bringing this great content to you. And, it's funny. The more you guys like and comment and push us up in the algorithms, the easier it is for us to keep making this great content. So if you like what you're hearing, keep coming back because we're going to deliver the goods. And hey, thank you for joining the Coach's Corner. I'm Devin Dubuque.
And I'm Coach Rick Koenig.
We'll catch you on the next one.